Our next speaker, Michael Bungay Stanier, or MBS for short. Wait, actually, one quick point. There's 16 people in back. There's 32 chairs. I've already counted available. So if you do want to sit, feel free to come on up. It's a long day. You don't want to be standing that long. So MBS, Michael Bungay Stanier, he was the recipient of the 2023 Thinkers 50 Award for coaching and mentoring. He is the expert. Think of it as the Oscars or Grammys for management studies. In some ways, for this audience, he's the Bill Belichick of coaches. Without the hoodie and without the moody misdemeanor.
I'm moody.
Okay,
oh, yeah.
We'll find out later. So MBS wrote this book called The Coaching Habit. It sold over 1 million copies. It's considered a classic on the subject of executive coaching. In his most recent book, I have provided for all of you. There's a couple copies on the tables and then more outside. Happens to be the best title, which is How to Work with Almost Anyone, which sort of describes my everyday living. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Jeremy. Perfect. Lovely. Yeah, coming up then. Brilliant. Lovely. So I'm going to make this a really good half an hour for you, but it actually is a little bit interactive to start off with. So I've got 3 questions to kick off. You need to write your answers down, nice and easy, because they're numbers. So the first question I've got for you is this. Scale of 1 to 7, 1 is low, 7 is high. How active and engaged do you plan to be with me over the next 30 minutes? Exactly. So 1 is something over here which is like, honestly, we're an hour into it. I haven't had enough coffee. It's quite a stressful time. I'm sitting as far away from Michael as possible. Honestly, I'm hoping to get a little nap in over the next 30 minutes. Maybe get my pulse rate down into the low 30s. That's a 1. 7, on the other hand, is like, look, I love this stuff. It's going to be a day full of talking about numbers. This is a moment of talking about getting results, delivering results through people. So I plan to really show up and be active and engaged for that. So give yourself a number there. I'm not trying to bully you into a 7. I'm just trying to blend in with CFOs about numbers. So here we go. Here's the second question I've got for you. Scale of 1 to 7. How much risk are you willing to take with me over the next half an hour? How much risk? I know it's a bit of a weird question, but I'm not going to be lecturing you for 30 minutes. I'm going to get you to think about how you're showing up in your relations. So there's always a degree of risk when you hold up a mirror, particularly when you're doing it with 400 other colleagues and peers. So 1 is no risk whatsoever. You're hoping to think nothing new, meet anybody new, try anything new. You hope this whole moment flows over you, leaves you completely unaffected. That's a 1. 7, on the other hand, is where you possibly have poor personal boundaries. You know, you'll talk about that childhood moment that still makes you weep. When we do the naked thing at the 20-minute mark, you're the first to be getting your clothes off. Okay, that's a 7. And the third question I've got for you is this. On a scale of 1 to 7, how much do you care about the experience of your colleagues here in the room with you over the next half an hour? How much do you care about their experience? 1, I hate these people. Honestly, it's a nightmare to be in this room, and apparently this is going to be some sort of interactive thing. That's the worst of all worlds. 7, on the other hand, is like, you know what? I love these people. These are colleagues. They really get what's going on for me. I'll make sure I show up in a way that makes sure the people at my table around me make sure they get something useful out of the next 30 minutes as well. So you got your numbers. Here's what I want you to do. Just quickly turn to the person next to you and share your numbers. You've got 2 minutes in total to have that conversation. Do that now for me, please. Very nice, very nice. Thank you. Okay, great stuff. So just a brief moment to kind of check in with you about how you want to show up for the next half an hour. So here's my, just grab your attention. I know it's like good to talk, but we're 30 minutes away from the coffee break, I promise you. So here's my starting point. Your happiness and your success at work, happiness and success, how you feel and the impact you have, is driven significantly by the quality of your working relationships. And most of the time, we cross our fingers and we hope for the best. Hopefully this won't suck, hopefully this will be great. And I'd like to give you an insight about how to be more active about shaping the best possible working relationships you can have. But just to kind of check in on my assertion that your happiness and your success really is driven by the quality of your working relationships, I want to test two things with you. The first is this. I want you to just take a moment. I want you to think of one of the worst working relationships you've had. Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, if you're sitting at the same table with that person, don't look at them directly. Little awkward. But like, go back in time, or maybe it's a real thing for you at the moment, and just think about, that frustrating working relationship. What was done and what was said by them, and what was done and said by you, and not done and not said. And what I want you to think about, and I'd love you to write down 3 words for me here, is like, what was the impact on you? What impact did that frustrating working relationship have on the quality of your work, the advice and guidance you're able to give, whether your advice and guidance was listened to, how you felt about your job, how stressed you were by it? What was the actual impact of that frustrating, irritating, demeaning, whatever, diminishing job, that relationship? What was the impact on you? I want you to really notice it. And then I want to move from the dark to the light, and I want you to think about one of your best working relationships. Hopefully you've got something like that happening right now. One where you're like, they really get you. They really click with you. I mean, I was talking to one of your colleagues last night, and he said, look, there seem to be 2 types of working relationships I have with people, maybe 3. One is that I'm actually a key part of the business, and I'm a key part of the strategy, and we're involved, and there's a real sense of engagement. Often, though, he's called it a break glass in case of emergency relationship, which is my favorite relationships with CFOs is not a relationship at all. I never have to talk to them. But I want you to think about one of those really good relationships. It's like, now, what did you notice? What was the impact on you and your work, on the business? What did you achieve with that other colleague? How did you feel about the work? How did you dance through the tricky things to make, as we heard this just a moment ago, not just making the decisions around the good things, but how do you find the great choices amongst the good choices that you have? And I want you to write down 2 or 3 words around the impact of that from you. And what I notice is that, when you look at and I'm pushing you towards the 2 ends of the bell curve. I mean, the quality of your working relationships is probably a bell curve, and I've taken you to one end and the other. But at the bad end, the words I hear around, I feel frustrated, I feel annoyed, I feel diminished, kind of shrunken down, I want to quit. I kind of do quit, even if I don't leave the job, or I do quit and I actually leave the job. There's a real sense of not only do I not have much impact as a CFO, but I feel a bit crappy about the whole experience. They don't get me, they don't get the sense of value that I add. Whereas with the really good working relationships, you're like, I am contributing, I am making a difference. This is actually why I signed up for this job in the first place, to actually make this thing work. But work happens through people. So unless you can figure out how to kind of move the quality of your working relationships so they can be as good as possible, you're not having the impact, you're not delivering the results you want as a CFO. Now, I've got another number for you. I'm quite excited how many numbers I have in my presentation because I don't normally have that many. And you can choose to make this a kind of depressing number or an optimistic number. I think it's optimistic. This comes from a relationship researcher called John Gottman. And he says 70% of issues in relationships are perpetual, meaning that they don't get to be fixed. 70% are perpetual. They're just the way they'll always be. Anybody who's been married for a long time, I've been married for about 30 years, knows this to be deeply, deeply true, right? That's just like, Some things are just not going to change. You have to figure a way of managing around them, not kind of changing the other person. Here's why I think this is such an exciting number. First of all, stop trying to fix the 70%. It immediately frees up a lot of time and angst if you're not trying to fix the 70%. And then the second thing is that it says that 30% can be co-created to be a better working relationship. Up to 30% can improve. So my take on your working relationships is that they can all be better. Not just the good ones and making them kind of shinier and brighter and stronger and more resilient and long-lasting. Not just the ones in the middle that are okay, but they could be a little bit better, a little more sparky, a little more strategic. But even the ones that are hard at the moment, frustrating, even those can become 30% better. That moves them from unworkable to workable. That moves them from unbearable to bearable. Just imagine if you want to get work done, if you can improve all of your working relationships by a quality of 30%, what a difference that would make. So the goal is with your key working relationships, and you'll know who those are. That might be your CEO, that might be your C-suite colleagues, it might be people who are reporting to you on your team, it might be key clients, it might be key vendors. You'll know who your key working relationships are. They're the ones that have an impact on your, make a difference to your impact and your happiness. You're trying to build a BPR, the best possible relationship with those people, the best possible relationship. It's not a perfect relationship. I mean, not every working relationship is going to be kind of unicorns bouncing around, burping rainbows. You're just going, look, this relationship, you and me, we have potential. How do we fulfill its potential? How do we make this the best version of this working relationship? And if you're doing, and you're committed to a BPR, best possible relationship with your key people, you're looking to build 3 qualities. You want it to be safe, vital, and repairable. And I'm going to take you through each one of these one by one, and then I want to ask you, just of the 3, which one do you feel that you are best at the moment? I'm just curious to know how it kind of maps out in the room of 400 CFOs. So the place you start is safe. And for 10 or maybe 15 years now, Amy Edmondson, professor at Harvard, so here in the Boston area, she kind of introduced us to this idea of psychological safety. And I'm sure you've heard about this now because it's just understood to be one of those things that you need in your teams and in your organizations to help your people flourish. You know, Amy Edmondson's research was to say, look, the teams that work the best are not the ones that make fewer mistakes. They're the ones that allow the mistakes to be made and get processed in a way that gets the team through those mistakes rather than hiding the mistakes. So when you build a working relationship that is safe, you're saying to that other person, we can be ourselves here. We can say, we show up as the way we are. We can feel that we can say things without fear of retribution. But if I look at the idea of safe, I've had working relationships that have felt really safe and also slightly boring. It's kind of like a warm bath, and I don't even like baths. I'm like more a shower guy. So I want more than safe, although that's necessary, but it's not sufficient. I want a relationship that's also vital. So if this is psychological safety, this is psychological bravery. It's a willingness to push and a willingness to challenge and a willingness to have a hard conversation and to speak the hard truth and to take some risks and explore some edges. It's that willingness to bring life into the conversation. I mean, vital means both essential, but it also means full of life. So you need psychological bravery, and you need psychological safety and psychological bravery. But then the third of the 3 elements is repairability. You know, as part of the research for the book, and there's copies of the books on the table and also copies outside as well if you don't grab one from the table. I read all of the kind of big names in intimate relationships, people like Esther Perel and Terry Real and Dan Siegel and the like. And when you read across these brilliant researchers in intimate relationships, a kind of 2-part insight becomes clear. The relationships that last are the ones that get repaired. Most of us are pretty crappy at repairing relationships. Like most of us kind of like, oh, you know what? that was a bit miserable, that was a bit disappointing, because, newsflash, every working relationship you have gets damaged at some stage. It gets bent, it gets cracked, the fabric gets ripped. It's just the nature of working with other human beings, but most of us aren't that strong at repairing it. But repairability is what allows your working relationships to have a longevity and have a resilience to them. There's an interesting parallel in the world of consumer goods. There's great research that says if you're selling a consumer good or a service to somebody and you screw up, but then you do an amazing job at repairing the mistake, you really do a great job at fixing it, they are 10 times more likely to refer your product or your brand than if you just never screwed up in the first place. And there's something true about repairability here, which is, if you have go through a hard time but you fix it, the relationship not only gets back to where it was, but it actually goes beyond that, actually becomes deeper because there's a deeper level of trust and shared commitment to this being a working relationship. So BPR, safe, vital, and repairable. That's the key idea. It's like, so I want with the people, if I want to get work done, I need to build the best possible relationship with my key people, and they need to be safe, vital, and repairable. So then the question, of course, is, well, how do you do that? Well, the key is this. You need to have a keystone conversation with the people with whom you work, a keystone conversation. And what that is a conversation about how you work together before you plunge into the work. Sounds obvious when I say it. We should talk about how you and I work best together before we get into the work. But it's tricky because we are well trained just to get into it. All right, here's the challenge, here's the decision, here's what we're up against. Let's figure this out. The work is always urgent and important and exciting or a crisis. There's always a reason for you to plunge into the work. And I'm saying that for any relationship that has any length to it, you need to stop and go, before we get into this, how should we work well together so we make the best decisions, so we get the best outcomes, so we figure out and navigate the trickiest things together? So a keystone conversation, a brief moment of conversation about how you work well together before you plunge into the what of the work. And there are 5 suggested questions I've got for you to ask and answer in these keystone conversations. 5 questions, and you're going to see them in the book. And there's also, there's a URL all throughout the book so you can download the questions and actually see me role modeling a keystone conversation if you want. All that information's in the book. But here are the headlines. The amplify question, the steady question, the good date and the bad date questions, and the repair questions. And I'm not even going to tell you what this and this and this question are. It's trying to tease you to open up the book and take a look at them. I am going to tell you what the good date and the bad date questions are, because I think that could be really helpful for you as CFOs. The key insight behind these 2 questions is that patterns from the past repeat again in the future. So stop pretending they don't. Stop not learning from past experience, but use that insight from your past experiences to actually shape the ones going forward. So the good date question is, what can we learn from past successful relationships? And the bad date question is, what can you learn from past frustrating relationships? Here's my hypothesis. Most of the people you work with don't know how to work with a CFO. They haven't really figured out. They've kind of like, I've got some sense because I've been hanging out with you for a little bit, but I don't really know the best way to work with you as a CFO. So the good date question sounds something like this. When you've worked with a CFO before and it's been a really strong, useful, powerful relationship, what happened? What did that CFO do? What did you do? How did you figure stuff out together? What did you talk about? What type of problems did you solve? And then you go, and when I've worked with people who worked with me in my CFO role, let me tell you my favorite working relationships. This is what happened. This is what we did. This is what we didn't do. This is what we talked about. This is how we figured the stuff out together. You're actually together co-creating the idea of what a really active, good, best possible relationship with might be. And then there's the bad date question. And I've asterisked this because I love this. It's like, what can we learn from past frustrating relationships? My bet is you've had a few of those where you're like, you know what, this was just pretty underwhelming, pretty not my favorite type of working relationship. And most of the time we try and bury that. It's like, let's not even talk about it. But what I'm going to say is, why don't you bring it up and say, let me tell you, and let's have a conversation about the relationships like this that haven't worked in the past. When you've worked with a CFO or an equivalent, and it's been annoying or underwhelming or irritating, what happened? What did that other person do? What did you do? And now let me tell you the same. When I've been in my role and I've tried to work and I've been a good CFO and it hasn't worked, what happens then? So the good date and the bad date questions. Now, all of these questions you can kind of answer right away. You've probably got answers immediately as I take you through these two. But I'm going to spend just 5 minutes. And I want you to prepare and go a little deeper on your answers to one of the questions. Because the more you can prepare your answers for this, the more nuanced and the more subtle and the more useful that conversation actually is. So here's the question I've got for you. How or when do you get misunderstood? And my request for you to do this, and I'm going to get you to pair up and share your answers in just a minute, is to write down 3 ways that you repeatedly and in an irritating way get slightly misunderstood as a CFO. I'll give you an example of me. When I am thinking, actually kind of wrestling with a problem, get a really grumpy face. Like I look angry, bitter, annoyed, irritated. And it took me years before I realized why people were scared to have conversations involving me actually thinking with them, because I look like I'm angry. And finally, somebody on my team said, like, I want to talk about this, but I'm slightly scared of you and your anger issues. And I'm like, I don't have anger issues. I'm like one of the nicest people. I've literally never lost my temper with anybody with whom I've ever worked with. She's like, yeah, but your face. And I'm like, what? What's with my face? She's like, you look so mean. And I'm like, oh. And I know this feels unbelievable because look at me now. I'm happy and I'm smiley and I'm all this sort of stuff. But when I'm thinking, I've got that face. So when I am working with somebody, I have a very specific phrase. I say, when this happens, I look grumpy. It means I'm thinking, and it doesn't mean I'm angry. It means this, not that. So here's my request for you. I'd like you to write down 3 ways that you currently get misunderstood, because this is going to be really helpful information to share with people you're working with. 3 ways. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do that, and then I'm going to get you to turn to your partner and have a quick conversation. So 3 minutes. How are you currently misunderstood? I think I'll probably go about 5 minutes over, but yeah, okay, perfect, yeah, thank you. Ready, turn and have a conversation. How are you misunderstood? It's a perfect practice to rehearse that conversation. All right, lovely, very nice. Wrap that conversation up, please. And actually, I'm going to come down, and I'm curious to hear from some of you how it is that you get misunderstood. This is your moment to kind of, how much risk am I willing to take? So who wants to jump in? How are you misunderstood? Anybody? Yes, please.
We've actually got a couple we agree on here. One is when we're expressing that something is important, there's sometimes an impression that it's urgent.
Okay, so the difference between important and urgent, people ramp it up to urgent just because you've said it's important. Perfect.
Yes.
And there was another one? What was the second one?
The other is content criticism versus personal criticism.
Oh,
so
very
this
smart.
Information is incorrect, but you're still a good person. And
Got it.
Gets
Content criticism versus personal criticism. That's really helpful. Thank you. That struck a chord. Great. Who else? Yes, please.
I can hold here.
Yeah.
So one of the things, like the simplest one, right? So quick email versus quick phone call.
Right.
Oh my God, it makes a huge difference.
Quick email versus quick phone call makes all the difference. So knowing when to escalate to the right communication channel in terms of solving stuff. Lovely. Very good. What else?
Another thing, like if I don't ask feedback, so I assume it's all in my head.
Right.
I have no idea what other people assume. And if I don't repeat back or summarize back our conversation, again,
Perfect.
assumptions.
So helpful for you to ask for feedback, helpful for you to repeat back going, am I understanding this properly? Really helpful. Thanks, Irina. Perfect. A couple more people. How else do you feel misunderstood occasionally? You know that how much risk am I willing to take? This is the moment, people. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
You have to repeat for me. So
Yeah.
one of these, I am a idea generator.
Idea generator, yeah.
Doesn't mean that team must do all of it.
Oh, that's so good. I have that as well. It's like just because I have ideas doesn't mean that these are the ideas you should be doing. And for all of you who are in senior roles, you know the weight of that because any time a boss has an idea, what that does is it sucks the oxygen out of the room. Everyone's like, that's an excellent idea. I think we should definitely be doing that. I'll give you a coaching technique around that right away. So when somebody comes to you and says, all right, here's my problem, what's my challenge? And what I call your advice monster looms up, which is like, oh, excellent. I'm going to add some value to this conversation. I mean, they literally asked me for help. What you want to do to help empower and strengthen your people is you go, I've got some good ideas. Before I give you my ideas, I'm curious to know what ideas you already have. They'll always have one. And then you use the best coaching question in the world, which is simply, and what else? Because their first answer is never their only answer. You go, great, that's a nice idea. What else could you do? That's a nice idea. What else could you do? Great, I love this. What else could you do? And then, is there anything else that kind of helps wrap it up? And then you finally get to offer up your idea as a way of kind of going, look, I'm going to add something at the end to remind them that you're actually the smartest person in the room. But it means that you're not giving them the ideas that they've already had as well, and they feel more accountability and more responsibility. One last question around how you get misunderstood. Somebody over here, how much risk are you willing to take? Yeah, please, thank you.
As the CFO, I'm the one that is trying to be accountable all the time for spend.
So CFO trying to be accountable for spend all the time.
And I feel like the team perceives that I'm anti-growth when I'm not.
And the fears that the team perceives that I'm anti-growth and I'm not. And I'm glad you brought that up because I'm sure that's a common thing, which is like, I've got a reputation for being the no person. And actually, I'm saying no in the service of growth, not in the kind of restraint of growth, and helping people figure that out. I love it. So just as a way of wrapping up, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to carry on the conversation with the person next to you. Here's another great coaching question for you. What was most useful or most valuable for you from this 30 minutes? I mean, we covered a lot. We did the little check-in questions. How much risk are you willing to take? That's actually me having a conversation with you about how we want to work together before we get into the work. I'm trying to role model what that could look like. We talked about BPR, best possible relationship, safe, vital, repairable. We talked about the 5 questions of the keystone conversation, how we work together. 5 questions are in the book, including 3 exercises per question, so you can expand your answers. And then you just had that conversation about how you're misunderstood. So you've got a sentence and a half each. Turn to your partner. What was most useful or most valuable for here? Person with the longest hair gets to go first. Okay? Have that conversation now. All right, lovely. Thank you. Thank you. As Jeremy's about to come up and send us off to the coffee break, I think, here's my final, let's call it a call to action. It's probably crossed your mind that this Keystone conversation with these 5 questions is both useful but also possibly rare and a bit awkward. And you're right. This is not a common conversation to have in your organizations. But if you are committed to getting work done through people, through delivering results, the theme of this conference, then this conversation can really unlock some of the potential you have in the way that you work with people. So the call to action is this: be the person who reaches out and starts this. Somebody said to me recently, nobody likes to be the first person to say hello, everybody loves to be greeted. And as a group of senior people with influence in your organization, you're the person who is the best position to actually start these conversations. Thank you very much.